thank you parents for coming out tonight. I figure 5 after I'll go ahead and start. So anytime we have left after is for question and answer. If you feel like it could benefit from the group, you can ask those questions, or just privately you can come up afterwards and I'd be happy to answer. Not here tonight, but typically she is here as our travel agent, Heather Hurst. She's been with us for 7 years now. And we travel, if you've looked through the packet, with All About Travel. They do all the coordinating and logistics because I have enough to do and worry about. So, but I figure without further ado, we just talk about why we're here tonight. So thank you on a Sunday evening for coming out. I know for us, our family's usually vegging out, getting ready for the week of school and the blitz that it is. So I appreciate you coming out and making this time. Some parents who couldn't make it tonight have emailed me, and then just they're going to sign off on watching this video, but there's a camera in the back room, so if y'all want to wave and say hey to all the parents that aren't here tonight. But this packet is going to be available on the parent page at crosswithman.com, so if you lose it, it's fine. The reason I want to make copies is because the last page will be one that does need returned, is the trip commit form. So intent for tonight is obviously our Gatlinburg trip. So the trip dates are April 23rd through the 26th. That is a Thursday at school. Students do get an excused absence. This will be the first trip in 7 trips that I've taken where we're leaving in the morning time and not after lunch. And that's just to budget a little bit more time, because this beautiful scenery, as you see, is one of the few trips we get to take where kids actually enjoy the outdoors a bit too. So I wanted to budget a little bit more time in the Gatlinburg trip so our students can experience the national park and other amenities that we have at Gatlinburg. So we do leave that Thursday morning, and we will get back the 26th, which is a Sunday evening. We do have, if you've noticed in here, a mandatory departure meeting on Sunday, April 5th. I tried to make that before Palm Sunday and Easter for those of us that celebrate those holidays, just to avoid that conflict. So it's a 2.5-week gap before we depart, where you can get all those mandatory forms in, medical forms, authorization to treat my son or daughter on this trip if there's a medical emergency. So, and we will have notaries available that day of the meeting, which is nice. So if you're filling those forms out and bring your ID, rather than having to wait in line in a bank, then you can get that done there at the meeting. So, and again, that's Sunday, April 5th, 2020 at 7 p.m. And that'll take place in the cafeteria. Goals for this evening is just the student expectations building up to this trip. I outline what I like, but what's nice is you as parents, knowing this is a privilege for your son and daughter, is that you can also add to this. So if you feel like my expectations are maybe here and yours can be here for your son or daughter, by all means raise them. Going over the itinerary, which again typically Heather does, so I'm going to do my best to do that. Elizabeth, are you? And then establish payment plan, and the last page I just spoke of with our trip commit. So the student expectations, simply, and I think you would agree with this, they cannot be failing a single subject course. So JCPS outlines that as meaning if they get 1 U, it doesn't mean that they can't, they won't fail that particular subject. It's 2 U's that they're failing, and then they have to do course recovery. So that would also mean being removed from my room to then get some intervention time during their 4th period. And just something that's concerning. I feel like, hey, this trip's a privilege. We probably not ought to go if we can't maintain our academics in other classes. So maintaining a satisfactory conduct grade in the band class, and then obviously no suspensions. And that starts tomorrow, building all the way up to the trip. And I will admit there's been unfortunate circumstances in the past where a kid just made a bad decision, being that adolescent stage, and they did have to remove themselves from the trip, and that's one purpose why we do have this meeting, is just to outline that. So I thought what we would start with, if you haven't read those first 2 pages, just introductory stuff, it's everything I just summarized. The underline points are probably the most important for you to know. So why don't we just talk about the itinerary itself. So if you go to page 3, this will tell us where we're lodging. So you can go online and check out those resources of the hotel. We will be traveling with Shockey Tours, which we've done for the past 3 years. Some buses have Wi-Fi capability. All of them have USB ports, which is great for the kids, so there's an opportunity for them to charge their devices. Our travel planner, there's information to that. We do make payments through the school, and then we cut one check. That way you're not having to mail off all your checks to this agency. And they've just always been very gracious about that process with us whenever we have installments. So the trip inclusions are outlined there for you. So literally the day of the trip, your son, daughter does not have to pay a dime. Obviously, if you want them to have some extra spending money, that's an option for them for any souvenirs or whatnot. Not included, as I just kind of mentioned, expenses of personal nature and souvenirs. So if you flip to page 4, this will kind of give us a summary of where we're spending all of our money. So the buses do arrive at 7:30 a.m. And that will also kind of be hopefully after all the morning shuffle of that bus lot is cleared out. And on departure meeting, I will explain more about that arrival time and what that looks like. But we will load those buses at 7:30. Give us a good cushion of time to kind of pack our instruments, everything that we need, concert attire, all that jazz. Then the trip is not too long to Gatlinburg, so we should arrive at about 2 p.m. And I'm trying to show you some pictures of where we're also going, but if you've ever been to Gatlinburg, this is over Gatlinburg, so it's the skylift that takes you up to the top. Typically, during this season, they are doing renovations and updates, so we never get to go. And this is the one year where it happened where we checked and they're like, hey, they're open. So that's good for us. So that's going to be one of the first things that we do. Students will get vouchers, be able to play tons of games. They'll be in kind of some groups of 4 or more. But if you've never been to Over Gatlinburg, it's a blast. Everything from ice skating to arcades. They'll also be giving a lunch voucher there. So then afterwards, we're going to be departing that because we'll have spent a couple hours and then go to Bubba Gump Shrimp, which is walking distance at the bottom of the skylift. So has anyone not been to Gatlinburg, just as I explained this? Anybody? Awesome. So we all have. So you know everything is just right there. That's one of the joys of this trip. So when we're doing that, after dinner, we walk back to the hotel area to probably check in, make sure kids have their keys, know where their rooms are. And then we organize the time for downtown exploring before curfew is set. So the next morning, the kids will rise and shine. We have breakfast included every morning at the hotel, so that's another thing to cut down costs. They're in the gym. So Dylan's here to work with Harrison, who's first grade playing soccer. So there's a couple other 8th graders in there just showing him the ropes. So if he cries, just tell him toughen up, okay? All right. So, where was it? Yes, and then after breakfast, we go to the Sugarlands Visitor Center where we get a good stretch. The kids, there's a museum that's inside of here that explains the history of the Appalachian Mountains, including a short portion of bluegrass music, which we're going to do a unit study building up to this trip, just to talk about how that's a part of American music, meld of all these different cultures. To which the backside of this, it lends itself to various hikes. So we're going to take one that's roughly about an hour worth to Cataract Falls, as you can see in there around that 9 p.m. time. From there, we go to WonderWorks, and this is where the students will enjoy laser tag. They get to explore. There's really no like set boundary to you go here, then here, then here. As a typical museum, it's free to explore, so the kids will have a great time doing that.
WonderWorks is great.
What's that? WonderWorks is great. You've been there.
We went last time.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I know the kids were saying on reflections after this trip I took in 2017. It was their first time going to, but they loved it. So if you've never been in there, you've always seen that building, wonder what it is, ask your kid when they come back. So yes. The kids will be hungry after that, so then we go to CC's Pizza, all they can eat. Zachary Bird, he is now a junior at Eastern High School, holds the record of 18 slices of pizza. So if your son or daughter can beat that, I don't know what the reward is, but it'll be a high five from me, and don't throw up on the bus. So, but they always love to stop at CC's Pizza. From there, we then get ready for, this is our Friday, we meet back at the hotel to prepare for our Music in the Parks competition. So briefly to talk about maybe what this is, it's a nationwide competition that hosts middle schools and high schools of all various grade levels and ensembles. They have everything from jazz to choral to strings to band. So we'll compete in our own classification, a middle school, based on our school size of being over 750, makes us Class 2A. I won't know how many groups are competing against us until maybe a month and a half before we depart. But I can say that the Gatlinburg, being in that region, is always well attended for this time of year. And our groups have successfully placed in top 3 on most years that we've attended. So it's more than just going for the experience to perform and getting feedback from judges. It truly is a competition, and I think that motivates our group a lot. So and some pictures that after we're done here, if you just want to browse to see years past of how we've done, all those trophies are up there, and it'll be exciting to see what this group does too. So where we perform, it's not listed in here, I don't think, but we perform at Pigeon Forge High School, which is in Wares Valley. So if you're a parent that maybe wants to attend but not chaperone, we can definitely contact you with or put you in contact with our agent who would be happy to relay more of this information. But we should know our performance time closer to when we depart. But it's at Pigeon Forge High School. We'll perform for judges and then load up and be done. After that, we get to enjoy Dixie Stampede, which is just fun. The kids will be fed here. It's a dinner show. Lots of live animals and action and storytelling and songs. So the kids always enjoy it, and we'll prepare it into some teams. And you never know if your son or daughter might be called down to do a chicken race. So if that's the case, I will be live streaming, and you will be happy to use that as blackmail, whatever you want. So, but the kids always have a blast with that. And then for that night, it closes with just returning to the hotel and probably some downtown time before curfew is set. The next morning, once again, we rise and shine, and this is where we get the tag with Music in the Parks, because every location for this national competition pairs itself with a local theme park. So this is Dollywood, and has anyone never been to Dollywood? If you've been to Gatlinburg? Oh, it's just a blast. I tell you, the smells, the food alone is why I love to go. So, but tons of theme parks for them to go that are all throughout this park. They even expanded the park. I don't know the name of what it is, but I know that it will be finished by the time we go. So even if your son or daughter is not a roller coaster person, I promise they're going to have fun between the games and amenities they have there, those shows, the entertainment, that they will be paired up with someone who's going to be accommodating to their needs. And God forbid, and if your son or daughter get an accident with their arm, their leg, some of them actually get to cut line, which is great. So, but if they're in a cast, that we can still find a great time for them to go to. So we spend most of our day on that Saturday, the 25th, in the park. At 6:30, it says that there is, well, before that, sorry, Heather didn't put in here, there is an award ceremony for all the participants, and it's in this big arena. And some of the parents in here have been chaperones before, but they can attest. It's just, there's an MC, there's loud thumping music, the kids are hyped, it's great, we do cheers. And they'll start going through all the classifications of where kids placed, and we'll even have student ambassadors go up to receive the awards as they're presented. But it's just really well done and classy, and I'm excited to see, again, how our kids place. So that'll be kind of the wrapping up of our day in the park. We decided that after that, we would go to the Hard Rock Cafe to just relax, eat, before we have to wind down to go back to the hotel that evening. So that wraps up Saturday. Sunday, we wake up to get some breakfast again, and before we hit the road to go home, we will stop at the NASCAR Speed Park. And this is where the kids will eat in here. And as you can see, tons of different tracks. Inside here, where you cannot see, is just tons of arcade games that the kids have, I think, unlimited play on the cards for up to 2 hours. And so this is just a good way to wrap up how we spent our trip and to continue those fun relationships. So at that point, looks like 1 o'clock we hit the road, and we should arrive back by 6 p.m., ending up our trip. And that concludes that. So all meals included, as you can see. So I figure from here we could talk about just payment plans. Page 5 summarizes how we do rooms. So speaking to the room situation, students will be in rooms of 4. Sometimes if we have that odd number, it can be 3 or 5 even. They do have rollouts. But we try and make the price fair for every kid going. So even if your room ends up being in, again, I think there's 16 girls. So if we had 15 go, we would have to figure out how to disperse that payment throughout all of them. But they do sign up, and we have multiple drafts that go around, because you know how middle schoolers can be, this is the room with me, or wait, are you rooming with him? So we'll have plenty of opportunity to refine that list to make sure every kid is in a room with at least one friend. But that's the rooming situation for quad rooms, triple rooms, double and single. In adults, I have that running list on a Google file of those who expressed interest in chaperoning. I thought if you want to stick around and ask me questions, if you're a chaperone, I'd be happy to answer those. Heather outlined all the cancellation and change penalties that incur, as well as our disclaimer there at the bottom about the tour operations. If you had more questions on page 5, that would probably be for Heather, just about the payment situation. If you look at page 6, this is where we are now. But the $100 non-refundable trip commit and commit form is due by October 25th. You'll notice that we skipped the month of December, and that's because a lot of families are maybe celebrating holidays. So we just want to ease the pocketbook for them, and we resume that in January. The reason I have a question mark for the final payment is because our students as 8th graders are all raising money and fundraising to go in one pot. They've just completed their cookie dough fundraiser, so when I get that itemized print off, including donations, I know where we stand in terms of how much is already going towards this trip for every student. I wish that we could honor if the student, did $200 worth of cookie dough. I wish that that profit could go towards that individual, but Kentucky Red Book, that's a violation of what we can do with collecting money. We cannot do that. So it goes into one pot that is shared amongst all. So a date that is not up here that I did want to let you know, it's our biggest fundraiser as an 8th grade community, and that is December 14th. It's our Crosby Band Brunch. Last year we raised $2,500 in only 3 hours. We just sell pancakes, and it's $5 all you can eat. What's nice about this is the kids serve, so they have ownership of it. Parents, you help us ahead of time, just organize. We do a silent auction that raises big bucks. I know Ms. Hansard has helped in the past, so she can speak to that, but it's one of our biggest fundraisers we do to go towards this trip. So hopefully this payment is much lesser than what we see on paper, which was estimated at $555. So, and I did put in there, should be no more than $155 for this final payment. A question that might be in your mind now is about scholarship opportunity. If you're just really worried about, I want my son or daughter to go, so do I. We do have very generous alumni that I contact throughout year after year just to say, hey, would you consider sponsoring a student? And we can work that out. One thing we definitely want to encourage our students to do is find some way to contribute and pitch in. So if they're doing fundraisers, that helps a lot. So, but I think that concludes my last slide. So I figure I'd just open this up for the good of the group, any questions you might have that I have not answered. Anyone in here? I'm sorry, it is so hot. It is almost October, guys. So typically it's like I have the doors open, which is nice breeze. So any questions for me though that you think everyone would benefit from? We discussed more of our departure details, like expectations on the trip, when we're here, what should the students know and do, and your student is required to be at that departure meeting too, sitting next to you, so that way they're all ears. So, yes, sir.
I'm kind of confused about the pricing. So if my son's in a room with 3 other boys,
Yes, sir.
then his price would be $555. But if I said I wanted him to be in a room all by himself, his price would be $805.
That is a question for Heather, and I think that dictates how the pricing is dispersed. So I'm sure she would be happy to answer that. So I'm sorry I don't have an answer tonight. She typically is here. So
Okay.
yeah, she's in Mexico right now, so I'm leading the trip. So. But I can write that down to ask her too and put you in contact with you.
Right, or, I mean, it's going to be, once they figure that out, everyone's price is going to be averaged out, or what? That's what I didn't understand.
Right, I think some of it's based upon preference as well. I've never had a kid request a room of 3. We can always squeeze it with 4. So.
Right. No, I'm fine with 4 in the room. I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
I'm just wondering how that works exactly.
Okay. I'm writing down right now, sir. Anyone else? There was your hand up, Ms. Blumore? Sorry.
Yeah. It was kind of quick though, but the chaperones,
Yes.
is that like for just a regular quadroon type of thing? Is that what you're saying? Like
For
a
chaperone,
chaperone should be
what they've done,
expecting-
right, so what I would like to do in that is I'll put an email out just for chaperones and say, if you would prefer to be in a room with more than just yourself to cut the cost down, express that interest, and then like during our meet and greets or whatnot, like that would be an opportunity to just obviously know the person that you're
I
gonna be
guess I'm
rooming
gonna
with,
have to
so.
get a room by myself or something,
Okay.
because I think the family's going, and
Okay.
then I'm gonna be stuck by myself.
Okay,
So, unless you need another chaperone, but the thing is that, I just didn't know if they were planning on doing quad rooms or double rooms, or what chaperones were responsible for.
okay.
Like, what do you need the chaperones for? I guess.
Sure, chaperone, no, that's a great question. So, I think we've had roughly 9 to 10, I'll have to check again to Google Doc, express interest in being a chaperone. So, pretty much when we have our check-in points and it's curfew time and morning check-in, those are like the primary responsibilities. Everything else, the kids are traveling in their own groups. It's well supervised everywhere we go. The day where it's music in the parks, you will see, I mean, we'll have our own shirt with Crosby. I'd say 80% of the attendance that day is just the music in the parks people. So, but, you know, no fear about your student being supervised. The chaperone jobs are pretty well written out and easy to follow, so.
Okay.
Mhm.
I was just making sure what the responsibilities were.
Yes,
If they were
ma'am.
to have to be in a room, or if, like, if that was part of the chaperone.
So we've had some situations where like a student will room with a parent, and that also cuts the cost down for a parent. That is an option as well. But parents cannot be in a room with other students.
Okay.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yes. Any other questions? All right. Well, I don't want to keep anyone here that doesn't have any question for the good group. I will be up here if you have any questions for me.